Magic is found in every room where people connect over a shared purpose. In this weekly podcast, Luke, Hannah, and Chris explore the role of purpose, courage, mindset, and culture in every leader's quest for transformational performance.
Okay, welcome. This is Magic in the Room, and I'm Chris Province.
I'm Hannah Bradward.
And I'm Luke Freeman. And today we are talking about guest service, how to treat a guest, how to really follow up our intent with some real tactics on helping people feel connected, included, and there's clearly some performance and business outcomes there that we want to get to as well. But As always, we want to do our opening question. And so the question I thought of for today is really kind of tied to this idea of how we do guest service as well. And it's when is a time that you had an intent, you had something you wanted, you had maybe an internal motivation to do something, but you had to kind of rewind and learn some tactics first to be able to enable you to kind of follow that intent, make it real.
Yeah, the first thing that comes to my mind is coaching baseball. Right? Even if I was a decent ball player, right? And so as my oldest son, as he started to grow up, like, of course I want to coach his baseball team, right? Mm-hmm. Well, playing baseball and coaching baseball are very different things. So I knew that this is something I wanted to do. I know what the sport means to me. I want to have that shared experience with my son. But I sign up and we start doing the thing, and I realize, like, I have no idea how to actually coach what I know how to do. Yeah. And like most anything else in life, when we don't have those tactics, we have all the intent in the world, but if we don't have the approach and the methods and the cadence, we just kind of wander around. Mm-hmm. So, there's that saying, if anything you're gonna be good at, you have to suck at for a bit. So that was the whole thing. And I ultimately just had this, submit to the discipline. Mm. Like, I'm not worried about, how I play the game. I gotta be worried about how to coach the game. So then learning those tactics and committing to the discipline of coaching, that's what's required to kind of come out that other side with mastery. But it's about learning the X's and O's as much as it is having the intent.
Yeah, what came to mind for me is actually when I was developing the digital course Guest Service, which is on the topic that we're going to talk about today. And it is a course that's available from Purpose and Performance Group. And when I was, this was kind of a concept that we had developed internally, and it took 10 years of living these practices to really be able to surface the concepts that we're going to talk about today. So having the intent of, we know how to teach this, we know how to talk about it, but in order to transform that into a digital learning opportunity that somebody else can interact with and do that in a way that is, intuitive and that's clear and that's brain-based, and, it took a lot of learning some skills for me, right? Mm-hmm. So it's one thing to just show up in a room and present content that you're comfortable with. When you have to translate that into a different medium that you haven't worked with before, it requires learning some authoring software and learning where to break up different lectures and where to insert an activity and, just a different kind of flow. So it took a lot of trial and error and just practice and diving in, working with the tool, and then figuring it out. And so learning that discipline now that when I go to do it again, I can create a very different plan of action because I know approximately what it's going to take, how long things are going to take, what kinds of interventions I have to make along the way. And but it's, learning the skill, learning the tool, learning the tactics, even though you may know kind of you have an intent and you have some content, it takes some practice to make it easy and seamless.
Yeah. Well, for me, as I thought about that question for myself, a couple things came to mind. One is anything around visual arts. Mm-hmm. So I tried to major in art for a while and eventually couldn't double major and manage that. It's a theme in my life. Usually can't manage all the things I try and do. But one of the things I learned in school is like coming from high school, like natural talent visually will get you pretty far. You know, I did pretty well in like little high school shows and things like that. And then got to college and started using these different mediums, you know, whether you're moving into sculpture or different mediums on visual arts, or even as I think about like performance art, you know, which consulting sometimes we talk about is performance art, right? And so I'll have this vision for what I want to happen. And what I learned was that I couldn't just do it. Like I didn't have the skill to see a sculpture, for instance, just materialize. I really had to back up and learn the technicals of whatever medium it was to be able to be proficient in that medium and produce the thing, the beauty that I wanted to call out and produce. So that came to mind for me. And then another thing is just like relationships that matter. So I thought about my spouse, and my intent is always for us to have a meaningful marriage and for us to produce value for our children, for our neighbors, for the folks in our life that we care about. But I've really had to like go on more than intent. Like I've had to back up and, you know, for someone that I've been married to for 17 years now, like learn what are the communication tactics that work and connect with her that weren't intuitive to me. Like my intent has always been good, right? But my performance now is much better than it was, I'll say like the first 10 years of our marriage. And so this idea of like having to continue to grow and learn tactic to match our intent to actually our outcomes and our performance, I think really ties in to guest service. You know, I know as we go in and connect with folks in hospitality environments, in retail environments, or even just general customer service in any sector, right? Or business development in any sector, we see these people that they know they have something of value that they want to give to the guests or the customers that they serve, but they don't always know how to do it. And you two, I think, are real experts in this and have developed this material and these ideas. And I'm super excited to dig into it. So if I can just ask, like, Hannah, you know, when did you start to understand that guest service was something that required intentionality and methodology? And how did you, you know, start practicing that yourself?
Yeah, so I don't know that I have like a specific clear starting point of when I became aware of that. I can tell you when I really started becoming aware of the core message that we're going to talk about today, which is about allowing people to feel seen and to feel heard and be understood. That is something that has really emerged for me gradually over time, but there's been a couple of examples when that has become really, really clear, right? When that is, you know, and it might have started with, you know, and I'm thinking about examples from people in my life as well. You know, that high school teacher that saw something in you and called out the greatness in you, that saw something that you didn't maybe even see in yourself. And it caused you to get on this track, right? I have heard so many examples of great teachers that have had that kind of impact. It could have been a supervisor at work that noticed that you had a knack for something and called that out and called you to kind of step up. And so I think as humans, and this has become more and more clear to me as I've studied neuroscience and how the brain works and, you know, how we're wired as people, we want some evidence of our existence. And we get that when another human being acknowledges us, notices us, and especially notices something that we do well. And so that really is at the heart of this message. And you know, I have plenty of examples in my own life of when someone else noticed me and how that made me want to, you know, step forward and do something more, something greater.
Yeah. Chris, how about you?
So I guess all my lessons come from like wandering around aimlessly. You know, do no harm and try not to suck. You know, that I think it's the idea of. I think my biggest professional breakthrough was, kind of working with Dr. Bob and just that realization of it's not about me and experiencing the breakthrough of not going anywhere with carrying my flag, not going anywhere, putting my flag down and trying to be passive, but actively picking other people up,
Mhm.
like lifting them up, letting the light shine on them and all their talents. And, just by being in proximity to the person I'm lifting, I'm catching some of the other effect, right? So I'm bound to catch some of the light
Mhm.
if I'm holding people up. And it was this just that transformation of living a life about me to living a life that's in service.
Mm.
So not only seeing the professional growth that comes out of that, but just the texture of life, the meaning, the like, just how much better it feels. You spoke to offering other people value, and just that realization of life being about people of value, delivering value to other people. Building those thriving communities. And when I think about guest service, I think about it as a hack to live a life of service to everyone. I know we're going to talk about it in a business context today. I'm going to kind of take the role, like, how does it apply personally?
Mhm.
And viewing everyone kind of in our circle or in our communities as our guests. They are guests in our lives. They are part of our existence. And as we continue to write chapters in our story,
Mhm.
like, those stories don't change. Like, whatever the interactions and relationships are with the people in our lives, that chapter is written forever.
Mhm.
And there's no going back and erasing it. And so valuing that moment, valuing other people, and just embracing and loving what everyone can bring into our life. And
Mhm.
I think that's what, if you take that approach personally, that's what's going to show up professionally. That's what's going to show up in our business and really drive that success.
Yeah, that's great. So, Hannah, I mean, tell us about the construct here.
Yeah.
As we take this thing that, like I said, we enter into any business and there's good people there,
Mhm.
right? And they have good intent.
Mhm.
But as we kind of back up and give them process and technique,
Mhm.
like, what's your approach in doing that? How do we, construct this thing and move forward? I know we have a little acronym and all of that good stuff that's really handy. So,
Yeah.
yeah, let's get started on that.
So we'll dive into that, and to kind of set it up, right? We talk about the acronym GUEST, GUEST, and that really is fitting because the whole concept here is to treat your customers, your team internally, as if they were a guest. So when someone walks into your home, how do you welcome them? How do you want them to feel? It's all about the intent is uh, I want people to feel a certain way when they leave my presence, when they leave my home, when they leave my place of business, when they have an interaction with me. And when we're intentional about that, we're more likely to have that intended effect. But
Hmm.
if we have some specific techniques and how to do that, we're more successful in making sure that that happens, right? And there's this quote by Maya Angelou that I just love, right? People will forget what you said, they'll forget what you did, but people will always remember how you made them feel, because that is the thing that we remember when we walk away from whether it's a place of business or an individual that we interacted with. And it usually comes down to the individual level. It
Mhm.
affects how we feel about the business, how we're treated, but specifically how, what feeling was left
Mhm.
when we went away and we think back on that interaction, what feeling remains.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, it's about sense making,
Hmm.
right? So we're trying to inform someone's feelings about us or our
Hmm.
business,
Hmm.
um, and really in a way that's on brand.
Hmm.
Like, however people leave your presence, that is your brand.
Yeah.
And uh, I'm gonna go back to what Chief Smith used to say, and that's like, every day we're leaving a legacy. The difference. There's two types of people in the world. There's the ones that understand that they're leaving a legacy every day, and there's the people that don't.
Hmm.
Effectively saying there's people that are intentional about it, and there's people that aren't intentional about it.
Hmm.
and the people that aren't intentional will have more chaos, more wandering around. They'll live like I did for the first 32 years and some days today, you know? So, um, I think that's a key takeaway. I think a key message here too, when we talk about this construct, one, it's a tactical kind of hack to give us a framework to live by when in a life that's in service. Um, but I look at some operators and some entrepreneurs and some business owners, and they really like the product that they make,
Mhm.
and they hold like service in contempt, or they hold selling in contempt.
Mhm.
And what I would say is we cannot want to be in business, want to be an entrepreneur, want to be an executive, ultimately want to retire, whatever it is you want to do, whatever the vision of success is. You can't reach for that vision as a business professional and hold any part of doing business in contempt.
Mhm.
So you really, because the business of business is people, you can't hold people in contempt.
Mm-mm.
You have to enter market with something in your heart that says, I'm going to make meaning for these customers
Yeah.
or these guests or these consumers of my product.
Mhm.
And I think that's what this is a lot about.
Yeah, and I love that illustration around how this leads us to performance, right? And Chris, you always do such a good job speaking to that. Like, I want to talk about the yin to the yang of that. Like, for me, my personal purpose makes this important as well. So, do I want those business outcomes, and can I hold sales in contempt, right? Absolutely not.
Mhm.
But also, like, my personal purpose, which we have an episode on way back in season 1, right, is around inviting the next level out for someone.
Mhm.
And how could I ever expect to do that if I enter into someone's presence or they come in, whatever, and they're not comfortable enough to hear the questions I ask, or to be challenged, or to get a vision for that next level of where they could be,
Mhm.
where their life could be. So I have to do this work first,
Yeah.
and these steps are really helpful for me. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hannah, do you want to dive in on?
Yeah, let's talk about the steps.
Yeah, the steps.
Yeah,
GUEST acronym. Right?
exactly. Yeah, so I'll just go really quickly through each of them and then we'll talk a little bit
Yeah.
about each one.
Well,
So,
and I think it's an important thing to say, well, this is a 15-minute training that takes a lifetime to master.
Yeah.
It's
absolutely.
kind of like golf.
Yes. It's 5 things. You can remember them. It's one on each finger of your hand, right?
Yeah.
But to actually master it takes a lot of practice. So the G is for greeting with empathy and a friendly smile. U is for uncovering needs. E is for expressing gratitude. S is for sharing names and contact information. And T is for teaching benefits and advantages. So let's start with the greeting. When someone walks into our place of business or we encounter someone at a networking event or whatever the situation might be, we humans are wired to, by default, treat every stranger as an enemy. Our brain is going to say, I don't know you, you must be an enemy. You may represent danger to me. And so, until we're proven otherwise, right? And the
Mhm.
first way to prove to someone that you're a friendly is to smile. And so when we encounter someone that's kind of stone-faced, it leaves us really just sort of wondering, I don't know what's up with this person, right?
Mhm.
So you break the ice by smiling. You make eye contact and you smile. And then there's this concept of empathy, which really is a whole episode in and of itself, and we'll probably do some more deep dive on that at some later point. But for today, I think we want to talk about the concept of understanding where somebody's at by understanding how they feel, right?
Mhm.
And we can understand that cognitively. That's the first level of empathy. Yes, I can intellectually, cognitively understand that you're feeling upset right now. Or we can have emotional empathy where I really feel what you're feeling, right? Emotional empathy can go a long way in really making people feel seen and heard, right? Because I now can feel that you're with me, right? Emotional empathy can also have a, you know, counterproductive side where you get too emotionally involved with the other person, or you're so feeling so much pain for what they're experiencing that you can't even show up for them in helpful ways, right?
Mhm.
And so
Yeah.
the third level of empathy is about compassionate empathy, which
Mhm.
really kind of combines those two. It takes, yes, I feel what you feel, and I'm here to help you. And I have, I may have a solution or I can work with you to create a solution. So that compassionate empathy is what we're looking for when we're greeting somebody and they're coming to us um, in our place of business.
Yeah, it's almost how do you show up in an authentic way that you're
Mhm.
seeking to understand, like even at that moment of greeting.
Mhm.
When somebody gives me the head fake and like, what's up? Like I'm cussing at that person in my mind. I'm like, what is this person all about? Like I just got a head fake and a what's up. Like probably not my person. Now, can I extract something different from that relationship? Like what's
Mhm.
my obligation to invest further? But it's this like, do we have an intentional greeting?
Mhm.
Am I being me, showing up to you in a way that you know, like this person I can trust, this person has the knowledge to help me,
Mhm.
right? And this person cares about me.
Yeah.
Like the guy that gives me the head fake and the what's up, I have no belief that they care about me.
Yeah.
So I have to try really hard to engage with that person
Mhm.
and continue to hold them in regard and understand they're a person of value.
Mhm.
That's not my wiring. My wiring is to say, you don't care about me, therefore I don't trust you. You have not engaged with me, so I don't think you can help me.
Mm.
So, can I ask a why question?
Mhm.
Sure.
I mean, why is it that we go into places of business or connect with someone virtually, whatever it is, and we still encounter folks who do the head nod or do the stone faced, maybe look up and see that you're there and look back to whatever they're doing? Like,
Mhm.
why is this a pervasive problem, do you think?
I think at the bottom of that is it's a protective mechanism. Going back to the whole concept of as long as you're a stranger to me, I'm going to regard you as an enemy or somebody I need to protect myself from because you
Mm.
could represent a threat, right? The brain has two modes either we're approaching or we're avoiding.
Mhm.
And so we assess subconsciously before we're aware of it any situation as is this represent a reward or does this represent a threat? And I do think unless we're intentional about breaking that, and that's part of the leadership challenge in when it comes to guest service, customer service, is we have to be the first to break the ice and to do this to open with a smile and show some empathy. And then there's this concept of reciprocity. And we talk about mirror neurons, right? We've talked a little bit about that on the podcast before, but we have a lot of brain cells, neurons in our brains that really act as a mirror that mimic what we see, right?
Mhm.
So when somebody comes to us upset and come at us with a complaint, our natural instinct is to mirror that and get into defense mode,
Mhm.
right? So if we're a customer service person, a service oriented person, our job is to override that instinct to respond in kind and to act in a friendly and empathetic way, because then we're more likely to influence the energy of the other person and be able to turn that around.
Yeah, and I think this is one of those reasons I love doing this podcast because I'm sitting here just, pulling the taffy in my mind and I'm thinking, well, one answer to your question is, well, it would seem apparent that American industry and specifically service industry has grown much faster than the talent needed to support it,
Mm.
Mhm.
and train those skills and show up for the team members in a way that gets that transferred to guests or customers. The the other factor is I'm sitting here saying, well, the likelihood of a customer creating a threat to a
Mhm.
team member is
Mhm.
much higher than an employee or team member creating a threat for a customer.
Mm.
Just sheer numbers,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Um, and course, the employee is being compensated. They're like, they understand they're towing a line. The customers are not. They're giving money to the enterprise, so therefore they're taking rights. So as team members, like we've already given up some individual freedoms as concept of compensation. Like I'm not going to do what I want to do. I want to do what you want me to do, and I'll take money for that. And then we have customers giving money, therefore kind of taking on more rights. So the customer has more elbow room, and that's why they're perceived as a threat. So it's really interesting having this conversation of how you tie the relationship of customer and team member to neuroscience and threat.
Yeah.
So,
and we're talking about psychological threats here, right? Which to the brain feels the same as a physical threat, right? Hopefully we don't have a lot of encounters where there's physical threat in our place of business, although that could happen. But we respond in a very similar way when we feel psychologically threatened when someone is not friendly to us, right? That feels like a threat. And so by actively observing people's emotional state, observing their body language, what they're projecting, and becoming aware of how we're responding, and that we don't mirror that if it's negative behavior, right? But on the other hand, are they in a hurry? Mirror the sense of urgency, right? If they clearly act like they're in a hurry, if we're acting in a really slow and deliberate way, that's a quick way to annoy somebody, right? So kind of mirror their facial expressions, mirror their sense of urgency or their energy, and mirror body language to some extent. It'll allow the other person to feel like I'm connecting with you and I'm on pace. I see you, I'm observing you. And that is a good segue to the U for uncovering needs, right? So how do we actually uncover the need? Why is someone here today?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Well, that's where that's why we have discovery, right? And I think the start of any relationship, think about how much discovery we execute, whether it's personal, whether it's business. Like we're really understanding the needs of the person. Who are they? Where are they from? And just like in business, what kind of gaps do you have? Where do I have something that fills a need? Do I have a solution that marries to your need, your budget, etc.? But that's only done through discovery. And that discovery is made fully possible when we establish that greeting and that initial connection and a sense of trust and care. If I want actual, useful discovery, it really does tie back to the greeting. But I want to move from that trust-building greeting into that discovery and really as quickly as possible. So that's why you have to show up authentic from the jump. And, I don't know, that's my superpower. I don't know why. Okay, I can't maybe explain all that, but I know that I feel certain ways about people, regardless if I know them or not.
Right.
And when we sit around the table, they're very open about what their needs are. So that's my take on needs, and it's really as
just
simple
magic.
as that.
People just share.
Yeah, right.
No.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about some specific ways that we can do that discovery. And Luke, but I would love to hear your thoughts too, because we work as consultants to our clients, right? And so even though you may not consider that an obvious customer service situation, it really is. The same concepts hold true, right? So when you go into a client, how do you uncover what their true needs are?
Yeah, that's a great question, because oftentimes, at least with the type of work that we do, the levels of complexity, the levels of potential feelings of past failure, oftentimes we're there because something's not going well, right? And so for me, that first connection, the greeting, the building relationship is important, but then I quickly have to move into a space of vulnerability in myself, where I say, hey, here's what I've heard. Is that correct? Oh, I don't understand this piece of your business. Help me understand that. And then look for opportunities to invite them to the same level of vulnerability.
Right.
So why are we here? What are we talking about today? let them share a little, but always, especially in those first initial conversations, be looking for those little tells around, okay, you mentioned that you had a leader on your team that maybe isn't performing, or at least
Mhm.
that's the subtext I got.
Mhm.
Could you share a little bit more about that? Right? So we're looking to dig into those things that then I can create empathy around, right?
Yeah.
Say, "Oh man, everyone deals with that."
Yeah.
Right? Everyone has a leader on their team that they're not quite sure how to connect with, or they're not performing.
Mhm.
So let's talk about that.
Mhm.
I've had that experience. How did I navigate it in the past? So we're quickly looking for those ways to like build some shared experience
Mhm.
and have that vulnerability moment.
Yeah. And so I think just to kind of wrap up what I'm hearing from both of you, right? There is that element of, in the empathy, we can observe a lot, right? When we really do start paying attention to how someone is feeling, we can observe their body language, we can observe their sense of urgency, and we can read a lot on the surface. As humans, we're actually pretty good mind readers, right? But we're not perfect mind readers. We
Mhm.
don't actually know the thoughts that go on
Mhm.
inside somebody's head, but we can get some clues, right? We don't have to wait for someone to come to us and say, I really need this, right? We can infer a lot of things by our initial greeting and interaction with them. And then we have to do the discovery, which is asking good questions. And that's really what you're talking about, Luke.
Mhm.
And I like to think about, there's 3 levels of questioning. There's the surface questions, which are really just about establishing rapport and just getting some comfort level with the person. And then you have the situational questions. Now you're kind of doing some discovery of, why are we here today? What are kind of the presenting symptoms, if you
Mhm.
will? Like,
Mhm.
why did you bring us in, or why did you come to our business today? And that's
Mhm.
sort of the uh, that obvious thing. I come to the hotel because I need a bed for the night, right?
Mhm.
And so when I'm checking in, that's the obvious need. And then there's the third level of question, which goes to the emotional impact. What is the personal and emotional need that is driving this person to be here today? Or why are we really here? What are the things below the surface?
Mhm.
And so being able to kind of peel back the layers of the onion, because the presenting symptoms aren't always the root cause, right?
Right.
And very often when we can get to the emotion, emotion is information, right? So when we can understand what are the emotions that are driving this behavior or this action, that's when we can maybe understand the need much better.
Yeah. So, I love that example of, come to a hotel, the presenting need is I need a bed for the night. But how much more empowered would you be if you knew if someone was in town for a funeral, or for a wedding,
Mhm.
or for a vacation, or for
Mhm.
a job interview,
Mhm.
right? If I know that, if I build a relationship where I can get that information,
Mhm.
I can serve that person and give them such a better experience,
Yeah.
right? If I found out they're in town for the funeral of a close family member,
Mhm.
like I'm gonna probably send a basket to their room,
Right.
and they're gonna come back to our hotel for the rest of their life,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? So performance outcomes, but also just true value delivery to that person.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Exactly. And that's really what it comes down to, is understanding that we all want an experience, right?
Mhm.
And so all of this is talking about, what is someone's experience with our brand? And we want to be left with some kind of positive experience, positive feeling at every interaction. And so another way to do that is our next point here, which is expressing gratitude. And that really starts with developing this practice of noticing the good, noticing what people do well, noticing the things that are going well in my life, or the things that I can be grateful for, even though we may be in a challenging situation right now. We've certainly all experienced the effects of a global pandemic, and everybody's experiencing pain in some way. Yet at the same time, there's always something good. And when we're intentional about looking for that, we're more likely to see it. The brain has a negativity bias. So 2 times out of 3, we're going to be defaulting to finding the negatives because we're very good threat detectors, right? As we started talking about earlier, we're always scanning our environment for what could be a threat. So we're quick to notice anything that could be negative, that could be threatening. And it takes a little bit more intentionality to looking for the good things. And so developing that habit of seeing the good and then expressing gratitude for the good things in our lives, including the people that we work with on our team, our customers, our guests.
Yeah, like who in guest service, this idea of expressing gratitude, I think a lot of times it's just like we forget why we're there. Like we forget that the food on our tables and the roof over our heads, like it's because of this person that they're willing to engage with us. It doesn't matter if we're talking about us as the Gap or Apple or P&PG, right? Like the people that are willing to engage with us give us livelihood.
Yeah.
So that's gratitude number 1 that I think we should elevate and kind of move top of mind. The other piece of this, and it's why purpose is important, we have to be properly anchored to know if we're advancing something. So when we move purpose and we advance that, when we are anchored, we know when we achieve and we can be grateful for it. If I understand someone's needs and I advance their needs, I fulfill their needs, and I see their growth, or I witness their performance improve, then I can be grateful for it. But it's this idea of anchoring and then intention. And to me, that's the secret to all this. If we're going to be properly grateful, we have to know what we believe in.
And unless our purpose is something around, I want to be the most self-sufficient hermit in history,
Right.
right? We only get to accomplish it and fulfill our purpose because someone allows us to and accepts what we have to give.
Yeah.
And so only if someone's willing to kind of come along with us are we allowed to and enabled to fulfill what we believe we're on this planet to do. And so if we don't enter into these conversations with that sense of gratitude, I think we're not probably thinking deeply enough about the role that the people that intersect with us play in allowing us to fulfill that purpose.
Yeah.
So, up to this point, we've talked about, greeting with empathy, kind of uncovering and understanding needs, expressing gratitude. Like, what's the next thing?
Sharing names and contact information. So we're coming back to this concept of reciprocity, of sharing. If you want something to happen, you start and you initiate, right? So when I share my name and I say, "Hi, I'm Hannah," you're more likely to reciprocate by offering your name, right? So even just that is a way to invite someone to share their name with us. And a name is so important because it is one of the most important identifier for an individual, right? It's part of our identity. It is the only word that no matter what the context, when you hear it, you perk up and listen and you pay attention. Even if it's some other Hannah over there, if I hear some mom talking to Hannah, their child, I'm like listening up because I'm wondering if she's talking to me, right? So it makes us pay attention. It's a way to acknowledge someone's existence, right? By acknowledging their identity. And it's a way to elevate someone from an unknown potential threat to a known potential friend by acknowledging someone by their name.
Yeah. Well, I asked my Alexa the other day, tell me about Chris. And I learned that there was 126,000 of us in the United States.
Oh, wow.
So what's in a name, right?
Yeah.
I'm paying attention a lot. I guess that's what it amounts to. But there's not a whole lot to add to this, right? Sharing, like if I want something from someone else, if I want them to invest with me, I have to invest in them.
Yeah.
And if it's something as simple as giving a name, like in a guest service type interaction, or if it's something more meaningful, like if a lot of times if we want a business to engage with us, what do we say? Well, let us come in and kick the tires.
Right.
Let's take a little snapshot of what's happening with operations, what's happening within sales, what's happening within corporate LD&E. Like, let's get a little bit of story. We'll invest the time to uncover that need, right? And then after we make that investment, then we have the grounds to ask.
Yep.
But it's hard just to go in and say, hey, this is what we do. Don't you want to buy some? You know, the reciprocity is meaning like we're in this together. Our success is interdependent, and we're here to invest in you and build a relationship.
Well, and I think there's a reason these things are in the order that they're in, right? We're building that connection, building a relationship. And I think when you think about the experiences you've had where someone asks, hey, you know, and what's your email address? Right? At the end of a transaction, or hey, and what's your phone number? I'm like, no thanks.
What's up?
Right, exactly. You know, they didn't do this. They haven't earned my information. They haven't earned that type of relationship with me. And I think for leaders, when we think about training our frontline folks, people who are really connecting with our customers or our guests on a day-to-day basis, if they don't understand this process, we're setting ourselves up. We're taking a huge risk in, okay, and your email address is like as a got you at the end of buying a stick of gum or whatever it is, you know? All right, and so the last, we have done GUES. What is T?
T is for teaching, benefits, and advantages. And, you know, as you mentioned, these are in order because you build that level of rapport. You know, so whether you're in a customer service situation or sales interaction, you know, the biggest mistake that people do is that they just show up and throw up and they start talking about their product and they start talking about why we're so great.
Don't forget price.
And the price.
Product price.
Exactly, without taking that time to really understand the other person. But when we've done that, when we've built that rapport and established that level of relationship, now is the time to teach about, not just tell, right? And there's a reason we use the word teach, to give people an opportunity to understand, you know, they're here for an experience. And I can share with them a number of different ways that they can enhance their experience, right? By teaching all the benefits of whether it's my product or the service that we're providing, and not just, you know, giving out information and telling them a bunch of stuff, but really taking that role of the teacher, right? One of my teachers and mentors, Steve Laswell, that we've had on the podcast before, you know, one of the sayings that really stuck with me was, ask more, tell less, teach when you can. And as a coach and as a leader, it's something I've really taken to heart of, you know, we start by asking the questions, uncovering the needs, and then we teach the benefits.
Sure, absolutely. And every brand has reasons to believe in the products and services they deliver, but taking the time to tell the story, right? Not just the reasons to believe. We've been doing this 50 years. We make all the things. We do it for these big brands. No, like we have to craft the story for the person we're engaging with, and then understand what reasons to believe match this need. And then we can, like those messages of hope, based on what I know you need and what our company does. So many reasons to see success. We should be hugely optimistic based on what I understand your needs to be that you've confirmed and the advantage of the things that we do. We're going to do some meaningful stuff together. This is going to be meaningful work. You're going to be successful. We're going to have a story to tell. You know, I think marrying understanding the needs to the teaching of advantages is mission critical. And this is also where I would tie it to just living lives that are in service understanding the needs of other people, understanding the resources and support that we can provide, and marrying other people's needs to what we have to give.
Absolutely.
So I want to anchor back to something that, Chris, I think you said. This is 15 minutes to learn the concepts, a lifetime to really master them. So if someone thinks that this is something they want to work on personally, or they have their team and they want them to kind of learn some of this methodology, begin to practice it. I know we have a blog post out there. I know there's also an online course. How would someone, Hannah, find those and engage with learning more about this methodology and really this life practice of guest service?
Yeah, well, I would say just start by going to our website, purposeandperformancegroup.com. Like you said, there's a blog article here where you can learn more. If you look at the learning page on our website, you can find our blog, you can find our online learning academy, Igniter Academy, and we'll put the link to that specific course in the show notes so you can add your email address to get notified of the next time we are offering this as an open enrollment cohort. And if you want to dive really deeper into these concepts, or maybe invite your team in to learn more about how to treat customers as guests.
Yeah, this is also education delivery that we do within specific corporations. So if a leader doesn't want to engage on kind of that retail scale, we customize service delivery education for specific enterprise. And also, I always go online and engage with a coach. You know, so we have our coaching services there, and all of us understand this methodology. But a lot of different ways to engage. But our idea right here is to deliver value to people, and I just can't think of a better way to do it than doing it with you guys. So thank you guys very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for everyone who joined us for this episode. We're not hard to find, so you can go to purposeandperformancegroup.com, reach out to any one of us individually, and we would love to practice what we preach with you and connect with you, learn more about your story, and looking forward to it. Have a great day.